The scent hit me first. Unfamiliar perfume lingering in my living room like an uninvited guest. Sweet, cloying, definitely not mine. I stood frozen in the doorway, keys still dangling from my fingers as my eyes traced the evidence scattered across our cream-colored couch. A wine glass with a perfect crimson lip print. A silk scarf in deep purple, carelessly draped over the armrest. The half-empty bottle of Cabernet that Travis and I had been saving for our anniversary. I'm Skylar, and this is the moment my carefully constructed life began to crack. My hands didn't shake as I set down my purse and took out my phone. Click. 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 3 perfect photos of someone else's presence in my home. The timestamps would matter later, I knew that much. 4 years of marriage had taught me to document everything, even if I didn't yet understand why. Mommy. Mason's voice echoed from the hallway where Mrs. Peterson, our elderly neighbor, held his small hand. We made cookies. I forced my face into something resembling normalcy. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I scooped him up, breathing in the simple comfort of his baby shampoo and sugar-sweet breath. Thank you for watching him, Mrs. Peterson. I really appreciate you picking him up when the daycare called. Anytime, dear. Though Travis should have answered his phone. I tried him 3 times before calling you. Of course he didn't answer. He was too busy entertaining his guest. After Mrs. Peterson left, I settled Mason with his toys in his room and returned to the living room. My fingers traced the lip print on the glass, and I wondered if she'd worn the same shade when she kissed my husband. The thought made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed. Travis. Hey, babe. Running late at the office? Don't wait up. The lie settled in my chest like ice. I typed back, no problem. Hope the meeting goes well. I didn't mention finding his little souvenir collection. Didn't tell him I'd come home early because Mason had a fever. Didn't say I knew exactly what kind of meeting kept him busy. Instead, I walked to our bedroom and opened his closet. The evidence was there, too. A receipt from La Maison tucked into his jacket pocket, dated last Tuesday when he'd claimed to be at a client dinner. $200 for wine and dessert. Romantic. My phone buzzed again. Sarah this time. How's Mason feeling? Better. Listen, can you come over tomorrow? I need your help with something. Of course. Everything okay? I stared at the purple scarf, its silk catching the late afternoon light. No, but it will be. Mason's voice called from his room. Mommy, can we have mac and cheese? Coming, baby. I called back, then quickly typed to Sarah. I'll explain tomorrow. Bring your laptop and that real estate contact of yours. I tucked the scarf into my drawer and washed the wine glass, erasing the physical evidence but keeping the photos safe in my phone. Travis wanted to play games? Fine. But he'd forgotten something crucial about me. I learned strategy at my father's knee, watching him build his real estate empire from nothing. And I'd inherited more than just his eyes. That night, as I tucked Mason into bed, he asked, Is Daddy coming home to read my story? Not tonight, sweetie. I kissed his forehead, still slightly warm. But don't worry, Mommy's going to make sure everything's okay. I sat in the darkness of his room long after he fell asleep, planning my next moves like pieces on a chessboard. Travis thought he was being clever, but he'd made a fatal mistake. He'd underestimated me, and by the time I was done, he'd learn exactly what that meant. The game was just beginning, and I intended to win. The key clicked in the lock of my parents' Victorian home. My home now, though I still couldn't think of it that way. 2 years after their accident, their presence lingered in every corner. Dad's reading glasses on his desk, Mom's gardening magazine collection still arranged by season. I'd barely touched anything since the funeral. Sarah's heels clicked against the hardwood floors behind me. You're sure about this? Travis wants to sell it. My voice came out harder than I intended. He's been pushing harder lately. Says we could use the money for investments. Bastard. Sarah moved past me into the study, her laptop tucked under her arm. Your parents left this house to you specifically, not to both of you. He can't force a sale. I traced my fingers along the mahogany desk where Dad had taught me about property values and market trends. He's found a way. I saw the paperwork he tried to hide. He's already talking to developers. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. I've pulled up the deed records. There's something weird here, Sky. The ownership status changed last month. My stomach dropped. What? It shows a transfer of partial interest to... She squinted at the screen. Evelyn Blackwood? Through some kind of holding company. The name meant nothing to me, but the timing, right when Travis started staying late at the office, that meant everything. My phone buzzed. Travis. I ignored it. Look at this. Sarah turned her laptop around. Evelyn Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Development. They specialize in historic property renovation. Her air quotes dripped with skepticism. A woman's face stared back at me from the company website. Elegant, mid-40s with a shark smile. Something about her eyes reminded me of that purple scarf. She's connected to him somehow, I said. The affair, the sudden interest in selling, it's all linked. Sky. Sarah hesitated. There's more. Your brother Lucas called me yesterday. He's worried about some investments Travis convinced him to make. The betrayal twisted deeper. What investments? Some kind of property development fund. Lucas said Travis promised guaranteed returns, but he's having trouble getting straight answers about where the money went. My phone buzzed again. This time a text. Where are you? We need to talk about the house. I typed back. Busy with Mason. Another lie in our growing collection. Sarah watched me, concern etched on her face. What are you thinking? I walked to the window, looking out at Mom's rose garden. The bushes were overgrown now, but still blooming, stubborn like she'd been. I'm thinking it's time to do what Dad taught me. Follow the money. And Mason? Is exactly why I can't let Travis destroy everything my parents built. I turned back to her. Can your real estate contact help us trace these property transfers? Already texting him. Sarah's phone chimed. He can meet tomorrow, but Sky, if Travis is involved in something shady, then I need proof. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled through recent photos. The wine glass, the scarf, the receipt. And I need to know who this Evelyn Blackwood really is. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I watched Travis stride up the walkway, his face set in lines of frustration I'd grown too familiar with lately. Back door. I whispered to Sarah. Take the laptop. I'll handle him. She squeezed my arm as she slipped out. Be careful. I stood in the study, surrounded by my parents' memories, and waited for the front door to open. Travis thought he was playing a clever game, but he'd forgotten something crucial. This house wasn't just property to me. It was my heritage, my son's future, and the last piece of my parents I had left. The door opened. Travis's footsteps echoed through the hall. Skylar? His voice carried a note of warning. We need to talk about some papers I need you to sign. I touched Dad's old fountain pen, still sitting in its holder. Yes, I called back. I think we do. Game on. Travis stood in my parents' study, his suit jacket draped over Dad's chair like he owned it. The sight made my fingers curl into fists. You weren't supposed to find out like this, he said, sliding papers across the mahogany desk. But since you're here, we might as well discuss the offer. I didn't touch the documents. Which offer? The one to sell my family's home or the one you made to my brother? His pause was barely perceptible, but I caught it. Lucas told you? He's not the only one who's been asking questions. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photo of the wine glass. Like, who's been helping you make these investment decisions? The color drained from his face when he saw the image. Sky. Is it Evelyn Blackwood? The name hit him like a physical blow. Or maybe I should ask her protege. Chloe, isn't it? A woman's laugh drifted through the open window. Rich, confident, closer than it should be. Travis's eyes darted toward the sound. You brought her here? My voice came out whisper quiet. Dangerous. The front door opened. High heels clicked on hardwood. Travis? The car's waiting. Oh. She was younger than I expected. Sleek blonde hair, expensive dress, wearing the same shade of lipstick that had stained my wine glass. Behind her stood an older woman, Evelyn Blackwood herself, looking exactly like her website photo. Mrs. Henderson. Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. We were hoping to discuss this professionally, like how you professionally helped my husband steal my brother's savings. Travis stepped forward. Nobody stole anything. It's a legitimate investment opportunity. The returns are a lie. I pulled up the property records Sarah had found. Just like the paperwork you forged to transfer partial ownership of this house. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? You don't understand business, he snapped. This house is just sitting here, a waste of valuable property. Evelyn's company can what? Turn my parents' home into condos? Use it to scam more people like Lucas? Chloe laughed, the sound grating. God, you're so provincial. This is why he needed someone who understands ambition. My phone buzzed. Sarah's text. Police contact confirmed fraud reports against Blackwood Dev. Evidence incoming. Ambition? I smiled, feeling the weight of Dad's fountain pen in my hand. Let me show you what ambition looks like. I pressed play on the recording app that had been running since I entered the house. Travis's confession about Lucas's investment played clearly through the speaker. Evelyn's composed mask cracked. Turn that off. Why? Worried about what comes next? The part where you discuss the forged documents or the other investors you've defrauded? You're bluffing, Travis said, but his voice shook. Am I? Ask your father, Travis. He's been helping me gather evidence for weeks. Turns out he's not thrilled about his son becoming a con artist. Chloe grabbed her purse. We're leaving. Now. No. I blocked the doorway. You're staying right here until the detective Sarah called finishes reviewing those fraud reports. He seemed very interested in Blackwood Development's history. Evelyn's face hardened. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you're doing. Actually, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm protecting what's mine. I met Travis's eyes. All of it. The house, Mason's future, my brother's investment. Everything you tried to steal. Blue lights flashed outside the window. Travis lunged for the papers on the desk, but I was faster. Years of watching my father build his business legally, ethically, had taught me more than Travis ever understood. It's over, I said as footsteps approached the front door. And Travis? I want a divorce. The look of defeat on his face should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt only a cold certainty that I'd done what needed to be done. For Mason, for my parents' legacy, for myself. As the detective entered, I thought of Mason, safe at Sarah's house, unaware that his world was changing. I'd tell him tomorrow, help him understand as best I could. But for now, I watched Travis's carefully constructed scheme crumble and felt the weight of my parents' absence lift just a little. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about protection. And I'd protected what mattered most. Mason's dinosaur backpack looked too small against the pile of hastily packed suitcases. He clutched his favorite T-Rex, watching me with eyes too serious for a 4-year-old. Are we going on vacation, Mommy? The bruise on my wrist, hidden beneath my sleeve where Travis had grabbed me during our confrontation, throbbed with my pulse. Something like that, baby. We're going to stay with Aunt Sarah for a while. My phone lit up with another message from Travis's father, Henry. He's threatening legal action. Says he has proof you knew about the investments. Be careful. The doorbell rang. Sarah stood there, car keys in hand, face grim. Henry called. You need to see this. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos, me at the family home, meeting with Sarah's real estate contact, screenshots of emails I'd never written authorizing property transfers, all expertly forged. Evelyn's good, Sarah said quietly. She's setting you up to take the fall if the investment scheme goes south. Mason tugged at my sleeve. Can I bring my blocks? Of course, sweetheart. I forced a smile. Go pick your favorites. As soon as he was out of earshot, I turned to Sarah. How bad? Lucas called. The FBI is investigating Blackwood development. If these forged documents surface... She didn't need to finish. My phone buzzed again. Travis, come home. We can fix this. Think about Mason. The threat beneath the concern was clear. I deleted the message. A car pulled into our driveway, Henry's Mercedes. Travis's father stepped out, looking older than his 60 years. Skylar. He held up a USB drive. You need to see what I found in Travis's home office. We gathered around Sarah's laptop. Spreadsheets, emails, bank transfers, a web of fraud with my forged signature woven throughout. But there was something else. Wait, I said. Go back to that email. It was from my parents' old email account, dated 2 months after their accident, an account that should have been closed. Someone's been using their identity, Henry said, to authorize transfers, validate documents. Travis and Evelyn didn't just forge your signature, they've been ghosting your parents. The violation hit deeper than the affair, then the theft. They'd stolen not just money and property, but my parents' memory itself. Mason's small voice came from the doorway. Daddy's here. Travis stood on our front lawn, Chloe waiting in her car at the curb. He looked up at the window, eyes meeting mine. Take Mason upstairs, I told Sarah. To Henry, I added, how much time do I have before those documents surface? 24 hours, maybe less. Evelyn's getting nervous. She'll move soon. I thought of my father's lessons about business, about protecting what matters, about how sometimes the best defense is making your opponent reveal their own weakness. Send everything to your FBI contact, I said. But first, I need you to make some calls. If they want to use my parents against me, let's show them exactly what the Henderson name still means in this town. Henry nodded, understanding darkening his features. Travis doesn't know I'm helping you. Keep it that way. I watched Travis pace the lawn, phone pressed to his ear. He made this about family. Now he'll learn what that really means. Sarah returned without Mason. He's playing in my old room. Sky, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything. I touched the bruise on my wrist. I'm finishing what they started, but this time we're playing by my rules. Travis's voice carried through the window. Just give me an hour. I can convince her. I picked up my phone and dialed Lucas's number. My brother answered on the first ring. You ready? I asked. Everything's in place, just like Dad taught us. I watched Travis below, still believing he held all the cards, still thinking he knew what I was capable of. His next move would be desperate, probably violent. But I'd learned from the best. My parents hadn't just left me a house. They'd left me their strength. And I intended to use it. Sarah's guest room felt like a war room. Laptops, documents, and coffee cups covered every surface. Mason slept down the hall, his dinosaur nightlight casting shadows while we planned our next move. The board meeting's tomorrow, Henry said, spreading out the shareholder documents. Evelyn's planning to present evidence that you've been embezzling funds through your parents' estate. I studied the forged paperwork. My mother's signature looked perfect. Too perfect. They've been planning this for months. Lucas's voice crackled through the speakerphone. The FBI agent says they need more time to build their case. If Evelyn presents those documents first, I'll be arrested, I finished. And Travis gets everything. The house, custody of Mason, control of the estate. Sarah's phone buzzed. Her face went pale. Sky. Evelyn just posted bail for Travis. My hand instinctively went to my bruised wrist. The restraining order hadn't even been processed yet. He's not alone, Sarah continued. Chloe's with him, and they're heading to your parents' house. The security camera feed from the Victorian showed them forcing open the back door. Travis knew about the spare key behind the loose brick. Of course he did. I'd trusted him with everything once. They're looking for something specific, Henry observed, watching Travis tear through Dad's study. Something they need before tomorrow's meeting. The realization hit like ice water. Dad's ledger, the real one. Lucas's sharp intake of breath crackled through the phone. The one with all his notes about the property deals? I thought that was lost in the accident. No. I grabbed my keys. Mom showed me where they hid it right before she said I'd know when to use it. Skylar, wait. Henry caught my arm. If you go there now, they'll destroy everything my parents built. I pulled away. I won't let that happen. Sarah blocked the door. At least let me call the police. By the time they arrive, Travis will have what he wants. I met her eyes. You know what he's capable of now. The security feed showed Travis and Chloe methodically destroying the study. Books thrown, drawers emptied, pictures smashed. Each crash felt like a physical blow. Stay with Mason, I told Sarah. If I'm not back in an hour, don't. She hugged me fiercely. Just don't. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. Streetlights streaked past like accusations. What kind of mother leaves her child to confront her abuser? What kind of daughter lets thieves destroy her parents' legacy? My father's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes protecting what matters means risking everything. Travis's car sat in the driveway, Chloe behind the wheel, engine running. Our eyes met through the windshield. She smiled, reaching for her phone. I slipped in through the garden entrance, my childhood route for sneaking out. The house creaked with familiar sounds, but now they felt like warnings. Travis's voice drifted down from upstairs. It has to be here somewhere. Evelyn says we need proof of the original deals. Maybe in the master bedroom? Chloe called back. Rich people love hidden safes. They didn't know. Mom and Dad never trusted safes. Too obvious, Dad always said. The best hiding place is one nobody thinks to question. I moved silently through the kitchen, past the shattered family photos, toward the one place they'd never look. Mom's garden shrine. A simple wooden cabinet filled with seed packets and tools. The false bottom had fooled even me, until she showed me the trick. The ledger waited there, wrapped in plastic, exactly as she'd left it. Inside were records of every legitimate deal, every proper transaction, and notes about which developers had tried to force sales through fraud, including Evelyn Blackwood, from 15 years ago. Footsteps creaked overhead. I clutched the ledger, heart pounding. I could slip out now, unnoticed. Safe. But Mom's favorite photo lay shattered on the floor. The three of us in her garden, laughing. They'd destroyed enough. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lucas. Tell Henry to call the board. Emergency meeting. Tonight. Sky, it's time they learned what happens when you threaten a Henderson. The stairs creaked. Travis was coming down. Game on. The boardroom lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. 15 faces stared back at me. Old men in expensive suits who'd known my father, who'd attended his funeral, who now sat in judgment as Evelyn Blackwood presented her case. As you can see, Evelyn gestured to the projection screen, the transfer documents clearly show Mrs. Henderson's involvement in the fraudulent activities. My father's ledger felt heavy in my bag. One move could end this, but timing was everything. Travis sat beside Evelyn, not meeting my eyes. The bruise on my wrist had darkened to purple, visible now beneath my sleeve. I caught Henry's slight nod from across the room. Everything was ready. Furthermore, Evelyn continued, we have evidence of offshore accounts. The boardroom door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, badges raised. Evelyn Blackwood, the lead agent announced, we have a warrant for your arrest. The chaos that erupted was almost beautiful. Almost. Then Chloe screamed from the hallway, he has your son. The world stopped. My phone lit up with Sarah's text. Travis broke in, took Mason. I'm so sorry, police following. The ledger, the evidence, the arrests, none of it mattered anymore. I ran. Travis's car screeched out of the parking garage, Mason's terrified face pressed against the back window. My son's mouth formed one word. Mommy. I jumped into Henry's Mercedes, keys already in hand. He'd planned for this, knowing his son better than I had. The engine roared to life. Skylar, wait! Lucas's voice crackled through my phone. Police are in pursuit. Don't. I ended the call. Traffic blurred past as I followed Travis's taillights. He was heading toward the harbor, toward Evelyn's private yacht. Their escape plan, now desperate and accelerated. Rain started falling, making the roads slick. Travis took a corner too fast, fishtailing. Mason's scream carried through the closed windows. "Pull over!" I shouted uselessly. "Think about your son." Travis's response was to accelerate. In the passenger seat, I caught glimpses of Chloe's panicked face. She hadn't signed up for this level of crazy. The harbor appeared through the rain. Travis's car skidded to a stop near the private docks. He yanked Mason from the back seat, carrying him toward the yacht where lights already blazed. I abandoned Henry's car, running across wet concrete. "Travis, please." He spun, Mason struggling in his arms. "Stay back. This is your fault, all of it. If you just signed the papers, Daddy, you're hurting me." Mason's voice cracked with fear. Something shifted in Travis's eyes, something dark and desperate. "I can't go to prison. I won't." "Then let Mason go." I took a step closer. "Let him come to me and you can take the boat. I won't stop you." Chloe grabbed Travis's arm. "She's right. This is insane. He's just a child." Travis shoved her away. She slipped on the wet dock, falling hard. In that moment of distraction, Mason bit his father's hand and broke free. Everything slowed down. Mason running toward me, Travis lunging after him. The dock's edge slick with rain. My son's feet sliding. I dove forward as Mason fell. My fingers caught his jacket, but momentum carried us both over the edge. Cold water shocked my system. Mason's weight dragged us down. In the murky darkness, I heard my mother's voice. "Protect what matters most." I kicked hard, pushing Mason toward the surface, using the last of my strength. Hands reached down. Lucas's hands. I realized dimly. He must have followed me. Mason broke the surface, safe in his uncle's grip. But as I tried to follow, something caught my leg. Tangled dock line, pulling me deeper. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was Travis's face peering down from the dock, finally showing something like remorse. Then nothing. The hospital lights were too bright when I opened my eyes. Lucas sat beside me, his face drawn with exhaustion. "Mason?" My voice cracked. "Safe. With Sarah." He leaned forward. "Travis is in custody. They caught him trying to board the yacht." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by rage. "And Evelyn?" "That's why I need you to focus." Lucas showed me his phone. The FBI found something in her files about Mom and Dad's accident. The world tilted sideways. 2 years of grief suddenly felt like an open wound. It wasn't an accident. The words tasted like poison. Was it? Brake lines. Evelyn's company wanted their property holdings. When they wouldn't sell, he didn't need to finish. A nurse entered, checking my vitals. "You have another visitor. Police detective." The detective was older, weathered, with kind eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Henderson, we need your statement about the dock incident. But first, there's something you should know. Your husband's talking." Travis's confession played on a tablet. His voice shook as he detailed everything. The fraud, the affair, how Evelyn had orchestrated it all. How she'd promised him wealth beyond imagination if he helped pressure me into selling. She said it would be easy. Travis's recorded voice cracked. "Like the Henderson accident. Just make it look natural." The detective paused the video. "We're offering him a deal in exchange for testimony against Blackwood Development, but we need your cooperation." I thought of Mason's terror on that dock, of my parents trapped in their car, of everything that had been stolen from us. "When?" "The DA's waiting. Now." Lucas helped me into a wheelchair. My body ached from the near drowning, but something burned hotter than pain. Purpose. The conference room was small. Travis sat handcuffed to the table, Evelyn beside him with her lawyer. She still wore her boardroom smile, but it cracked when she saw me. "Skylar," Travis started. "I never meant—" "Save it." I pulled out my father's ledger. You wanted this so badly? Read it. The lawyer reached for it, but I opened it myself. Page 47, Dad. The day Evelyn first tried to force a sale. He documented everything. Evelyn's smile vanished completely. That proves nothing. Maybe not alone, but combined with the brake line evidence, the fraud paper trail, the attempted kidnapping. I leaned forward. You really should have researched the Henderson family better. Dad taught us to keep records of everything. You can't prove I had anything to do with your parents. Her voice held a tremor now. No? I turned to Travis. Tell her what you told the FBI about her instructions, about making things look natural. Travis wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I had to protect myself. You weak little. She lunged across the table. The detective moved fast, restraining her. As they led her away, she screamed threats, promises of revenge, but all I could see was the fear in her eyes. The same fear my parents must have felt. The DA has everything he needs, the detective said. It's over. But it wasn't. Not quite. I wheeled closer to Travis. Mason asked about you yesterday. Wanted to know if bad daddies can become good daddies again. His shoulders shook. What did you tell him? The truth. That people make choices. And those choices have consequences. I placed the ledger on the table. You have a choice now. Help make this right, or let Evelyn drag you down with her. Why are you giving me this chance? Not for you. I thought of Mason's smile, so like my father's. For our son. Because he deserves to know that even when people fail us, justice doesn't have to mean destruction. I left Travis there, staring at the ledger that contained both his downfall and his potential redemption. Lucas wheeled me out into the sunshine, where Sarah waited with Mason. My son ran to me, careful of my injuries. Mommy, are the bad people gone? I held him close, breathing in his innocent trust. Yes, baby. And they can't hurt us anymore. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about protecting what matters most, even if that means showing mercy when you least want to. Dad would have understood that. The Victorian's front porch creaked under my feet as I fitted the key into the lock. Mason darted past me, his dinosaur backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Can I have my old room back? Of course, baby. I watched him race upstairs, his footsteps echoing through halls that finally felt alive again. Sarah helped me carry in the last box, marked simply, Mom's Things. We'd found it hidden in the attic during the final walkthrough of my old house with Travis. Henry called, she said, setting the box down. Travis's sentencing is tomorrow. I nodded, running my fingers along the box's dusty edges. Lucas is handling it. I need to be here. You sure? Through the window, I watched Mason in the backyard, carefully watering Mom's roses just like she'd taught him. Some had survived the neglect, stubbornly blooming despite everything. This is where we need to be. Sarah squeezed my hand and left me alone with the box. Inside, beneath old photos and keepsakes, I found an envelope with my name in Mom's handwriting. The paper was aged, like she'd written it years ago. My dearest Skylar, if you're reading this, you've already faced what I always feared. Someone trying to take what we built. Your father and I knew Evelyn wouldn't stop. We've left you everything you need to protect our legacy, but the real strength was always in you. Remember? Revenge is easy, but justice takes courage. Choose wisely. Love, Mom. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis. The DA offered 5 years. I'm taking it. Tell Mason I'm sorry. I deleted the message without responding. Some apologies couldn't be sent by text. The doorbell rang. Henry stood there, looking older but somehow lighter. The board approved your proposal. The Henderson Foundation for Ethics and Business Development is officially funded. Dad would have loved the irony. I invited him in, using Evelyn's seized assets to fund oversight and whistleblower protection. Travis asked me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. Said it was important. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Travis's signed confession about my parents' accident, more detailed than what he'd given the police. evidence that would ensure Evelyn never saw freedom again. "Grandpa Henry," Mason's voice carried from the garden. "Look at my flowers." Henry's eyes misted. "May I?" I nodded, watching him join Mason by the roses. They looked right together, proof that some bonds transcended the sins of others. In my father's study, everything was finally back in place. His glasses on the desk, Mom's magazines arranged by season, the ledger returned to its rightful spot. But something felt different. Lighter, clearer, like morning after a storm. I opened the wall safe behind his desk calendar, where he'd always kept important documents. Inside was one final surprise: adoption papers dated just weeks before their death. They'd been planning to adopt Lucas permanently, making official what love had already decided. My brother's footsteps in the doorway told me he'd known. "Found them last week," he said quietly. "Dad told me the night before the accident. They were going to tell you at Sunday dinner." I hugged him, feeling the weight of everything we'd lost and found in these past weeks. "Sky?" Mason called from the garden. "Can we plant new flowers?" Through the window, I watched my son kneeling in the dirt, Henry showing him how to prepare the soil, just like Mom had shown me. Behind them, the roses bloomed fierce and bright, survivors all. "Coming, baby. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. Sometimes it's about building something stronger in its place." Mom knew that. Now I did too. I joined my family in the garden, where new things were ready to grow.
At 26 years old, my name is Ellie, and I find myself in a place I never imagined. My husband Liam, who is 27, and I have been married for 2 years. We first crossed paths in college. I was pursuing a degree in education, and he was working towards a law degree. Our connection was instantly deep, though not without its complexities, and after several years together, Liam proposed. Our wedding was a dream, and the initial phase of our marriage seemed perfect, filled with love, laughter, and mutual support. Liam's career as a lawyer took off at a prestigious law firm, and his dedication was something I always admired. However, over the last year, his job began to consume him. I initially brushed off his late nights and the weekends he spent at work, chalking it up to the demanding nature of his profession. To combat the growing distance between us, I planned a special vacation for our anniversary, hoping to reignite the spark in our relationship. Things took a turn about 3 months ago when Liam mentioned a new co-worker, Olivia, a young and ambitious lawyer. He praised her as a refreshing presence in the office, and they quickly became a dynamic team. At first, I didn't mind. Jealousy was foreign to me, and I trusted Liam completely. But soon, his work hours extended even further, and Olivia's name began popping up in our conversations more frequently. Liam's changes didn't stop at the office. He started dressing sharper, hitting the gym more often, and was constantly glued to his phone. I attempted to joke with him about his closeness with Olivia, but his dismissive laughter didn't ease my concerns. Our own relationship started to feel the strain. Our interactions turned mechanical, focusing solely on mundane details like bills and schedules, lacking any real emotional connection. This emotional chasm widened until Liam made an unexpected decision. He brought Olivia along on the trip we had planned for our anniversary, leaving me behind to care for my ailing mother. It was then I realised the depth of our issues. I could no longer ignore the reality of our crumbling marriage, prompting me to serve him divorce papers during what should have been a celebratory dinner. Now, as Liam faces the consequences of his choices, I'm grappling with the unexpected turns my life has taken. While I never envisioned this scenario for myself, here I am, navigating through the complexities of heartbreak and betrayal, yet hopeful for a future where I can find happiness again. I sensed that something was amiss, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was or how to address it. Each time I attempted to discuss my concerns with Liam, he dismissed them, assuring me that I was just being sensitive and that all was well. Despite wanting to trust his reassurances, I felt an unsettling change deep within. Enter Olivia, Liam's co-worker, whose vibrant personality seemingly made his days at work more pleasant. I noticed a certain expression on Liam's face whenever he spoke of Olivia, an expression that unsettled me, twisting my gut with worry. My unease only deepened when Liam cancelled our date night to attend a work function with her. When I brought up my suspicions, he brushed them off, claiming she was merely a colleague and accusing me of being paranoid. Driven by my doubts, yet hoping to mend our relationship, I planned a romantic getaway to the mountains for our upcoming anniversary. Just Liam and me, away from all distractions, including Olivia. It seemed like the perfect chance to reconnect. However, just as we were about to leave, I received devastating news. My mother had fallen seriously ill and was hospitalized. Heartbroken, I insisted Liam go on the trip without me while I cared for my mother. Reluctantly, he agreed. At first, Liam and I stayed in touch regularly through texts and video calls, but soon his responses grew brief and infrequent, which didn't sit well with me. Then, the bombshell dropped. A friend, also vacationing nearby, sent me a photo of Liam dining with Olivia at the very restaurant where we had planned to celebrate our anniversary. My heart shattered at the sight. He had chosen to spend our special trip with her. Since Liam returned, I have been tormented by indecision. Part of me wants to confront him and demand answers, possibly even end our marriage, while another part wonders if I'm just overreacting, though deep down I suspect there's no innocent explanation. Only my closest friend knows the full extent of my turmoil, and she's advising me to leave him. After days of wrestling with my emotions, I resolved to confront Liam. I rehearsed my words meticulously, bracing myself for any response, apologies, denials, or even attempts to convince me I was mistaken. The thought of this conversation haunts me, as I prepare to face whatever may come. The anxiety was consuming me, and I couldn't wait any longer to address what was on my mind. I chose a quiet Saturday evening when we were both at home. I was determined to confront him in person, not allowing any chance for misunderstandings through text. As usual, he was absorbed in his phone on the sofa when I walked in and sat opposite him. "Liam, we need to talk," I said, my voice carrying a weight that made him look up in surprise. "What's up?" he asked, sensing the gravity in my tone. Taking a deep breath, I plunged into the heart of the matter. "I know about Olivia. I know you took her on our anniversary trip." For a moment, her face lost colour, and it looked like he might try to deny it, but then he sighed heavily and ran a hand through his hair. "Ellie, it's not what you think," he started. "Really? Because it seems pretty clear to me that you took your work wife on what was meant to be our romantic getaway." "Our anniversary trip," I countered. He shook his head, trying to explain. "It wasn't romantic. She was just having a tough time at work, and I thought it would be nice for her to get away." I was incredulous. "So, you decided to play the hero by taking her on our trip? Did you even consider how that would look or how it would make me feel?" "I didn't plan it like that." He defended himself weakly. "You told me to go. I didn't want to cancel, and it just happened." "Just happened? Did it also just happen that you were holding hands in the picture my friend sent me? Did that just happen too?" His silence told me everything I needed to know. He was caught, and he knew it. After our intense conversation, Liam left the house saying he needed time to think. That was fine by me. I needed space to strategize. Feeling betrayed, my anger grew as I reflected on the situation. I wasn't going to sit back and accept disrespect. If he preferred Olivia's company, he could have it, but I was not going to make things easy. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I hadn't told Liam yet, but I was preparing for the worst. I refused to be one of those women who sat around hoping their husband would magically change after such a blatant betrayal. I needed to protect myself. A few days later, I asked Liam to meet me for dinner at a nice restaurant, thinking a public setting might keep the conversation calm. He arrived looking apprehensive, likely bracing for another argument. I, however, was resolute and composed. Once we were seated and had ordered, I slid a manila envelope across the table to him. "Divorce papers, I saw," I stated plainly. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." Liam's face flushed a deep red. "Ellie, are you serious? You're going to throw away our marriage over one mistake?" "One mistake?" I almost laughed. "You've been emotionally distant for months, Liam. Then you took her on our anniversary trip. I don't know how you define a mistake, but that's not something I can just forgive." He glanced around the restaurant, likely hoping that no one was listening. "Ellie, please, let's just talk about this. You can't seriously want a divorce." "I didn't want this," I replied firmly, "but you made your choice. Now I'm making mine." Liam left me with no other option. I couldn't accept being a second choice in my own marriage. That evening, he tried to reach me repeatedly, but I was done with the conversation. He had made his choice, and I was firm in mine. I called my best friend, who quickly arrived with wine and ice cream, and we spent the night dissecting every moment of the confrontation. By the time Liam returned, I had already locked the bedroom door and drifted off to sleep. I heard him pacing outside, debating whether to knock, but he never did. I think he realised it was too late for that. Since then, the atmosphere at home has been incredibly tense. Liam is still living in the house, but our interactions are minimal. He keeps attempting to apologise, insisting he made a mistake and doesn't want to lose me. But I'm not sure I can even muster the energy to care anymore. It's been 3 weeks since I gave Liam the divorce papers at the restaurant. Part of me feels empowered, having taken control of my life again. But another part of me is crushed by how quickly everything has fallen apart. Liam has been trying to act as if nothing significant had happened, which only makes living together more strained and awkward. Our conversations, when they occur, are fraught with tension. He oscillates between apologising and attempting to guilt me into taking him back, and sulking like a child when I remain unmoved. I've stood my ground, making it clear that divorce is what I want, though I don't think he's fully accepted it yet. My lawyer and I met again to initiate the official proceedings. We discussed how to divide our assets, which is complex. Thankfully, we don't have children, but there's still the house, 2 cars, and our joint savings to consider. Liam has been dragging his feet, still insisting we can resolve things without lawyers. During a review of our financial accounts, I discovered several unusual withdrawals and expenses I didn't recognise. It turns out Liam had been funding Olivia's lifestyle, dinners, trips, even her apartment rent, while insisting they were just friends. I was furious upon discovering this, but it only confirmed my suspicions. Liam has since tried to win me back with flowers, love letters, and promises to be a better husband, which would almost be comical if it weren't so painful. A few days ago, he tearfully told me he had cut off all contact with Olivia, claiming she meant nothing, and that he only realised his love for me after I confronted him. It was the first time I'd ever seen him cry. It was difficult not to feel something in that moment, but the deep-seated betrayal was too much to overlook. It's not just about Olivia. It's about the months of neglect, the lies, the feeling of being invisible in my own marriage. I told him I couldn't forgive him and that I still wanted the divorce. He looked devastated, but I had to stand my ground. He suggested counselling, but I feel like we are beyond the point of repair. The fallout has extended beyond just us. Our families are now involved, and it's been chaotic. My parents, who were already displeased with how distant Liam had become over the past year, are furious with him. This entire ordeal has strained relationships on all sides, further complicating an already difficult situation. The situation has gotten significantly more intense. My mom has been constantly checking in on me to ensure I'm okay, and she has made it clear to Liam that he is no longer welcome at family gatherings. While her reaction was more extreme than I anticipated, her unwavering support means a lot to me. On the other hand, Liam's family presents a different challenge. His mother called me last week, pleading for me to reconsider. She argued that all marriages face difficult times and suggested that we just need to work through our issues. She even insinuated that I was overreacting, which took me by surprise. I firmly told her that if she felt compelled to take sides, she should support her son, but I refused to be guilt-tripped into staying in a marriage that was beyond repair. Amidst all this, the drama involving Olivia has become the talk of Liam's law firm. Colleagues who I've met at social events over the years have been reaching out, expressing their shock and offering their sympathy. It seems Olivia isn't well liked at the office. There are whispers that she's been overly familiar with other male co-workers before, and now the gossip about her and Liam is rampant. Since the news broke, I've heard that she's been laying low and avoiding the office. From what I gather, things between Olivia and Liam have cooled down significantly since the divorce papers were served. He seems to be keeping his distance, perhaps realising the chaos he's caused. There hasn't been a dramatic end to their relationship, but it's clear that Liam is conflicted about how to proceed. I've started looking for a new place to live. Staying in our house, surrounded by memories of happier times, feels suffocating. Every room reminds me of what once was, and now serves as a monument to deception and broken promises. Meanwhile, Liam appears to be unravelling. He still goes to work, but seems like a shell of his former self. His friends have mentioned that he's become distant and distracted, and there's talk that his work performance is suffering. While I find no joy in his struggles, it's evident that living a double life is catching up with him. The fallout from his affair with Olivia has been significant, and it seems he's beginning to understand the cost. But for me, it's too late. Liam has attempted to engage me in conversation a few more times, but I've stood firm. I deserve better than what he's offered. 2 months have passed since I served Liam with the divorce papers, and the process has only grown more complex. I hoped for a straightforward division of our assets since we have no children, but Liam has complicated every step. After his attempts to reconcile failed, he began contesting nearly everything, from the house and cars to our joint savings. His lawyer has been particularly difficult, pushing back on every agreement, making clear that navigating this divorce won't be easy for either of us. Liam and his legal team are fiercely contesting the divorce, trying to limit what I receive. The most frustrating part is how Liam portrays me as the unreasonable one. He's even suggested that if I drop the case, we could start anew and work through our issues. He doesn't seem to grasp that we're well beyond the point of reconciliation. What really infuriated me was his claim that he should keep the house because he's the primary breadwinner, completely disregarding the financial contributions I made while I was working and the sacrifices I made for our marriage. His sense of entitlement is astounding. Fortunately, my lawyer has been outstanding. She's compiled evidence of Liam's infidelity, which we're using in the divorce proceedings to argue for a fair division of assets. We've also discovered that Liam has been funneling money into a secret account supposedly for work expenses, and we're investigating that as well. Mediation has been fruitless. Liam still holds on to the hope that I'll back down, but I refuse to be intimidated out of what I rightfully deserve. Each meeting feels like a battleground, and I can see the frustration on his face when he realises I'm not relenting. Meanwhile, the scandal of his affair has permeated his law firm, creating significant tension. Mutual friends have told me that his colleagues are questioning his judgment, especially given Olivia's reputation for inappropriate behaviour with male co-workers. His superiors are concerned too, as the clients have started to wonder if his personal life is impacting his professional capabilities. There are even whispers that his job might be at risk if things deteriorate further. It's ironic. He risked his marriage for his affair with Olivia, and now he might lose his career as well. As for Olivia, she's left the firm after the gossip became too much, transferring to another company to escape the fallout. It seems her relationship with Liam hasn't turned out to be the fairy tale he imagined. Amid all this chaos, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I moved out of our home a month ago into a small apartment in the city. It's been an adjustment living on my own, but It's also been liberating. I no longer feel like I'm constantly on edge, and this new space has allowed me to focus on myself for the first time in a long while. However, the emotional journey hasn't been entirely smooth. Some days I still find myself overwhelmed by the betrayal, breaking down unexpectedly. I've been seeing a therapist, journaling, and relying on my friends, but the healing process has been tougher than anticipated. Recently, Liam's family reached out again after a long silence. His mother, polite yet clearly struggling, asked if I would consider speaking to Liam one last time to give him some closure. I was torn between feeling sympathy for her and anger that she would ask this of me after everything her son put me through. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt pity, but another part was furious at the audacity of her request, given the pain I've endured. In the stately grandeur of my grandfather's mansion, a room filled with family members buzzed with a palpable sense of anticipation and unease. We were all gathered in the ornate drawing room, where the walls, steeped in history, seemed to resonate with the silent whispers of the past. Today, though, the atmosphere was different, charged with a tense mixture of sorrow and covert avarice as everyone settled into their seats. Among us were my Uncle William, exuding an air of smug confidence as he sat prominently near the front, my aunt, her features tight with anxiety, and my cousin Ava, her arms defensively crossed, her gaze sharp and calculating. The reason for our gathering was well known. My grandfather had left behind a substantial fortune, rumoured to be around $900 million. His legacy was a hot topic among us, each hoping to receive a fair share of his vast estate. Throughout his life, Grandfather had often spoken about fairness and his desire to ensure that all his loved ones were well cared for. He had reassured me multiple times, promising that his will would reflect his equitable intentions. So, despite the underlying tension, I felt a reassuring calm as we convened. I trusted that my grandfather had kept his word. However, as our family lawyer began the reading of the will, the room's atmosphere took a sharp turn. With a steady voice but an expression that hinted at unease, Lawyer read through the formal legalities before making a startling announcement. "To my beloved son, William," he started, his voice faltering slightly, "I leave the bulk of my estate, including the Sinclair mansion, valued at approximately $100 million and a cash sum of $10 million. A stunned silence followed his words. A ripple of shock passed through the room. I could almost hear Aunt's sharp intake of breath. Disbelief washed over me. This revelation was incongruent with everything my grandfather had espoused. William had been distant from the family for many years and had rarely visited Grandfather in his final days. His smug smile now seemed to revel in the surprise and dismay that his unprecedented inheritance provoked among the rest of us. It made no sense. Grandfather had always appeared more supportive of Ava's academic pursuits and my own involvement in the charity work he cherished. He had never shown any particular favouritism towards William. Yet, here we were, hearing of a will that concentrated the vast majority of his estate on him. As lawyer continued, the lesser bequests were outlined. Aunt received a modest country home, Ava a small trust fund, and I was granted a mere $210,000, a paltry sum compared to what was bestowed upon William. The room filled with a heavy silence as the gravity of the situation settled around us. I couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. The will didn't just diverge from Grandfather's often stated values, it completely contradicted them. Fueled by a mix of shock and a sense of injustice, I resolved to delve deeper. It was then I discovered unsettling discrepancies and outright fabrications that pointed to one harrowing conclusion. The will had been tampered with and my uncle's deception was at the heart of it. This realization marked the beginning of a challenging journey to uncover the truth and restore the integrity of my grandfather's final wishes. Ava was on the other side of the room when it happened. The shock on her face mirrored my own as disbelief and anger washed over us. She finally broke the silence, her voice shaking with rage. Grandfather promised me part of the estate, that we'd all be treated equally. William doesn't deserve everything, she said firmly. Aunt, standing beside her, paled but nodded in agreement. He told me the same. He wouldn't have left us out like this. William, who had been quietly listening with a smug grin, finally spoke. Really, now, everyone, he began, his voice oozing condescension. Father trusted me to manage the estate. Being his eldest son, it's only logical that I inherit the majority. I felt a wave of anger at his arrogance. He had never been there for grandfather, or for any of us, appearing only when he stood to gain something. Natural, I retorted, my voice low and filled with contempt. Grandfather was always about fairness. He made sure to tell me he'd look after us all. This isn't fair, William. It doesn't make sense. William shrugged, unaffected by our protests. The will is legally binding. Argue all you want, but it changes nothing. I turned to the lawyer, searching his face for any sign of hope, any loophole through which we could challenge this apparent injustice. But he only shook his head, his expression sympathetic, but resigned. The will was properly signed and witnessed, he explained. Unless you can prove foul play, there's little to be done. Foul play. The words echoed in my mind, igniting a flicker of hope. I remembered my conversations with grandfather, the promises he had made. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than we knew. As the family dispersed, each lost in their thoughts, I pulled Ava aside. I don't believe this, I whispered fiercely. I can't believe grandfather would change his will like this. We need to find out what really happened. Ava nodded, her expression grim. I'm with you, Michael. He was sick, but he was in his right mind. This doesn't make sense. Together, we made a silent pact to uncover the truth. I had no idea where this path would lead or what secrets we might unearth, but I was determined not to let William take everything without a fight. Grandfather had taught me to stand up for what was right, to protect what mattered, and this legacy, this family, fractured as it was, mattered. The next day, I began my investigation. I started with grandfather's closest friends, the ones he confided in, who knew him best. I spent hours going through old letters, journals, anything that might give a clue about what really happened in those final weeks. The more I searched, the more I became convinced something was wrong. This will, this distribution, it didn't align with the man I knew, who had raised me with a sense of fairness and integrity. I began to suspect William. I recalled whispers over the years, rumours of debts and shady dealings, but he had always managed to slip away unscathed using his charm and connections. Ava and I met frequently over the next few days, piecing together what little we had. She had uncovered some questionable transactions in grandfather's accounts, payments made to unknown entities in the months before his death. Subtle, easily overlooked, but suspicious enough to make us dig deeper. Finally, after days of searching, we found what might just crack the case wide open. As we dug through the heaps of financial records, we stumbled upon a pivotal piece of evidence, a letter handwritten by my grandfather, addressed to his lawyer, dated just weeks before his death. In this letter, grandfather articulated clear intentions for his estate, vastly different from those declared at the will reading. He had expressed a strong wish for the estate to be divided equally among his children and grandchildren to secure everyone's future. There was no indication of favouring William, nor any suggestion that the rest of us should be excluded. This letter was the proof we needed. It suggested that something had gone terribly wrong. Armed with this letter, I confronted the lawyer, who turned pale as he read the document. I don't understand how this happened, he stuttered, clearly disturbed. The will I read was the only one I had on file. This changes everything. It dawned on me then just how profound the deceit was. William had manipulated the situation, altering grandfather's will to benefit himself at the expense of everyone else. I felt a surge of anger, but underneath that was a firm resolve, a determination to right this wrong. I knew confronting William would be fraught with risk. He would deny everything and try to manipulate the facts. Yet, holding the letter, I felt empowered, buoyed by a sense of justice that fortified my resolve. I was determined not to let William tarnish our grandfather's legacy or take what wasn't rightfully his. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment to stand up, not just for myself, but for my entire family who had been wronged. The deeper I delved into our family's past, the more I unravelled a maze of secrets, each more convoluted and sinister than the last. The discovery of grandfather's letter had only intensified my suspicions that there was more to the story. I needed to understand why grandfather would have allowed such drastic changes to his will, and what role William had played in those critical weeks. It wasn't long before I learned that William had been visiting grandfather quite frequently in the months leading up to his death, ostensibly to help manage his affairs. At the time, those visits seemed innocuous, but now they appeared to be a part of a darker scheme. William's strategy to influence our vulnerable grandfather. I wasn't alone in my suspicions. My younger brother had been present at the will reading, quietly observing everything with a thoughtful expression. Known for his reticence, brother was more of an observer, but he was far from naive. He too had noticed the smug satisfaction on William's face and seemed to have reached similar conclusions. When I shared the letter and my concerns with brother, his response was swift and resolute. "I knew something was off," he said, his eyes hardening with anger and resolve. William's always had a knack for manipulating situations to his advantage, stepping on anyone in his path. If he influenced grandfather to change his will, it wasn't out of love or loyalty, it was purely for financial gain. Together, we decided to search grandfather's study, hoping to unearth more clues that would help us piece together the real story behind the changed will and expose the truth about William's machinations. The study had always been grandfather's sanctuary, a room filled with towering bookshelves, papers and mementos from his life. Now, as we rifled through his belongings in his absence, it felt odd yet necessary. Driven by a sense of duty, I was determined to uncover the truth and ensure his final wishes were honoured. As we opened drawers and cabinets, we uncovered a trove of old letters and documents, each revealing the complex web of relationships that had defined our family for decades. One letter, written by William just weeks before grandfather's death, particularly caught my attention. It wasn't overtly threatening, but the subtext was unmistakable. A veiled ultimatum to ensure the family legacy remained as he deemed fit. Though it didn't directly mention the will, the implication was clear. "This has to be it," brother murmured, peering over my shoulder. William was pressuring him. If grandfather was already weak, he might have complied just to avoid conflict. I nodded, the pieces beginning to fall into place. If William had coerced grandfather, then his control over the estate was founded on deception and manipulation. However, one letter wouldn't be enough to prove our case. We needed solid evidence of William's underhanded dealings. Then I remembered the old box of files grandfather had stashed in the attic. As children, he had shown them to us, a curious collection that seemed like nothing more than a family history. But now I suspected it might hold the key to William's schemes. Brother and I retrieved the dusty box, setting it on the study's desk to sift through its contents. Amid tax records, business transactions, and faded photographs, we finally found what we were looking for at the bottom of the pile, a series of financial records outlining William's engagement in dubious business ventures. These records were damning, showing how he had used the family trust as collateral for risky investments that had ultimately failed, costing the family millions. Yet, he had cleverly concealed the losses, maintaining the appearance that the trust was intact. It was outright fraud. As we continued to dig deeper, another set of transactions emerged tied to Uncle Henry, another of grandfather's brothers. Known as the black sheep of the family, always down on his luck and asking for loans, here was proof in black and white that Henry had been siphoning money from the family trust for years, covering his debts and funding his extravagant lifestyle at the family's expense. Brother shook his head in disbelief. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "All these years they've been bleeding us dry, and grandfather never said a word." "Maybe he didn't know," I suggested, though a deep sense of betrayal churned within me. Or perhaps he thought he could manage it. Either way, the revelation was bitter, realizing that those who were supposed to protect and support us had been exploiting us instead. But this was just the beginning. There were more secrets lurking, waiting to be uncovered. Over the next few days, Brother and I meticulously documented every piece of evidence, every transaction, every letter. We built our case slowly, solidifying proof that William had manipulated grandfather, resorting to blackmail and deceit to secure his position as the primary heir. But as we neared the truth, the stakes felt increasingly perilous. It was clear that William, and likely Uncle Henry, would stop at nothing to protect their secrets and maintain their ill-gotten gains. The tension between us simmered, a growing resentment that seemed on the verge of erupting. I knew confronting them would be perilous. They would deny everything, twisting the truth to their advantage. But I was tired of being manipulated, of watching them exploit our family without consequence. It was then I decided to confide in Ava. She had always been openly skeptical of William, and I knew she would stand with us to help expose the truth. Together, we would fight to reveal the reality of the situation, no matter the risk. When I laid out everything we had discovered, Ava was visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she sifted through the documents. "This is worse than I thought," she whispered, her eyes wide with alarm. "I knew William was up to no good, but I never imagined it went this deep." "We need to confront them," I declared, my voice firm with resolve. "We have to bring this to light. Grandfather and our family deserve better." Ava nodded, a fierce determination igniting in her eyes. "I'm with you, Michael. Whatever it takes, we'll ensure they pay for their actions." With Ava on board, we formulated a plan. We would gather the family, present the evidence, and confront them together. I knew it would be challenging. They would likely retaliate, attempt to deflect or deny everything. But I was prepared. For too long, I had allowed them to control the narrative and twist the truth for their own benefit. As I geared up for the confrontation, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with a sense of purpose that was both exhilarating and daunting. I was about to engage in a battle that could either tear our family apart or finally shine a light on the truth. The secrets I had unearthed not only shattered my illusions, but also clarified my mission: to stand up for what was right, regardless of the cost. I knew William and Henry would do everything to protect their secrets and maintain their control. But backing down was not an option. This was about more than just an inheritance. It was about justice, about honouring grandfather's legacy and ensuring the truth prevailed. As I prepared for the showdown, I reviewed the evidence we had gathered, feeling a resolute calm settle over me. I was ready to confront them, ready to expose the lies and deceit that had long poisoned our family. No matter the outcome, I was committed to doing the right thing, to standing up for the family that had been wronged, to reclaiming the legacy rightfully ours. The moment I chose to delve deeper into the family's secrets, I knew I was stirring up trouble. William's sudden appearance at my apartment confirmed my suspicions. He stood in my doorway, anger thinly veiled behind a forced smile. "Michael, we need to talk," he said, stepping aside. William was not one to leave things to chance. His presence meant he knew I was close to the truth, and he was here to thwart my efforts. "I've heard you've been poking around, digging into things that don't concern you," he said as he settled into an armchair, trying to dominate the space. "It does concern me. It's about our family. Grandfather's will was altered, and I believe you manipulated him into it," I countered, my arms crossed, meeting his challenging gaze head-on. William's expression darkened momentarily before he regained his composure. "You're grasping at straws, Michael. There's nothing to find. Grandfather made his decision. Let it go." "Let it go?" I echoed, feeling a surge of anger. "You think I'm going to stand by while you steal what's rightfully ours?" "I've found enough evidence, William. Enough to know you didn't play fair. And I won't stop until everyone knows what you've done." He leaned forward, his voice lowering, trying to intimidate. "Listen, I'm giving you a chance to walk away. I'm willing to make it worth your while." He produced an envelope from his pocket, placing it on the table between us. $710,100, Michael. Take it and stop this nonsense. You could do a lot with that kind of money. I looked down at the envelope, repulsed. "You think you can buy me off?" I pushed the envelope back towards him. "This isn't about money. It's about Grandfather's legacy. About the truth. I'm not going to be another pawn in your game, William." For a moment, he seemed poised to lash out, his face twisted with anger. But then, he forced a smile, laughed bitterly, and warned, "Suit yourself, Michael, but don't say I didn't warn you. Keep pushing, and you'll regret it." He left, slamming the door behind him. His departure left me more determined. William would stop at nothing to protect his stolen inheritance, and I knew things were about to get more dangerous. But I refused to be intimidated. I had come too far to back down now. The next day, Ava pulled me aside at our regular coffee spot, her demeanour almost conspiratorial. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, looking around cautiously. "I found some documents a while back. Evidence of William's schemes, the blackmail. I kept them hidden because I was scared. You know what he's capable of. But I can't just sit back now, not after everything." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I wasn't sure I could trust you," she admitted softly, her gaze flickering. "And I was scared of the fallout. But I can't watch him destroy what's left of this family anymore." I nodded, understanding the weight of her decision. Ava's bravery gave me renewed hope. "Show me what you've got," I said, my voice steady. She handed me a folder. As I flipped through the pages, detailing William's history of manipulation and how he exploited Grandfather's vulnerable state, a cold fury settled in. "He used Grandfather's condition against him," Ava whispered, her voice shaking. "He played on his fears, convinced him this was the only way to protect the family. It was all a lie." With this new information, a plan began to form. We needed to bring everything into the open, but not alone. We needed the family's support to expose William in a way that left no room for denial. "This weekend," I said, looking up at Ava with a sense of purpose, "we have our family gathering. It's the perfect chance to bring forward the evidence, lay everything out, and let the truth speak for itself. He won't be able to just talk his way out of this one." Ava nodded, her eyes alight with determination. "Let's do it. It's time we put an end to this." The days leading up to the gathering blurred with preparation and nerves. Brother Ava and I met regularly, poring over the evidence, rehearsing our presentation, and bracing ourselves for the inevitable confrontation. We knew William would attempt to deflect and paint himself as the victim, but we were ready. Armed with the truth, I felt a newfound sense of empowerment, a feeling that we could actually set things right. When the day of the gathering arrived, tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. Family members exchanged greetings, their smiles masking an underlying current of suspicion. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward to gather everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady but firm. "There are some things we need to discuss, important matters that have come to light since Grandfather's passing." William shot me a warning glance, but I ignored him, focusing on the gathered family, the people I was determined to protect. I presented the documents, methodically outlining William's manipulations, his exploitation of our grandfather's vulnerability, and how he had reshaped the will in his favour. The room fell silent as I spoke, each piece of evidence resonating like a strike, gradually dismantling the facade William had so meticulously built. I could see the shock and realization in their eyes as they processed the depth of the deception, the trusted family member who had betrayed them. William attempted to interject, to spin the narrative in his favour, but his words faltered under the weight of the evidence. For the first time, he appeared vulnerable and exposed, his image crumbling. "This is ridiculous," he stammered, desperation seeping into his voice. "You're all just jealous, trying to ruin me because you didn't get what you wanted. None of this proves anything." However, his protests were met with skepticism. The family was no longer swayed by his words. They turned against him, their simmering anger and sense of betrayal becoming palpable. "You've taken enough from us, William," Aunt declared, her voice thick with bitterness. "You've lied, you've manipulated, and now it's time you faced the consequences." Ava stepped forward, her gaze intense as she fixed it on William. "You can't control us anymore. We won't let you destroy this family. Not again." With that, William's facade completely shattered. He lashed out, hurling accusations and threats, but it was too late. The family had seen the truth of who he was, and there was no going back. A wave of relief washed over me as I realized we had won. We had broken free from his manipulative grasp. In the following days, we began the legal process to challenge the will and restore grandfather's original intentions. It was a difficult journey, fraught with legal battles, but I knew we were on the right path. The family came together, united in our determination to rebuild and heal from the wounds William had inflicted. For the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of peace, a belief that we could move forward and reclaim the legacy that had been wrongfully taken from us. As I looked around at my family, at those who had stood by me and fought alongside me, I knew we would emerge from this ordeal stronger and more resilient, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The trial itself was grueling, testing our resolve at every turn. William and Henry, desperate to maintain their grip, did everything in their power to delay the proceedings and obscure the truth. Their legal team portrayed them as victims, claiming the accusations were baseless and the evidence circumstantial. Day by day, the courtroom bristled with tense exchanges and fervent testimonies. William and Henry, flanked by their lawyers, alternated between defiance and calculated composure, projecting confidence as if challenging anyone to dispute their version of the story. I could see the cracks beginning to show in their armour. The strain in their eyes was undeniable. William and Henry knew the truth was stacked against them, and, despite their attempts to appear confident, it was clear they were rattled. The prosecution was relentless, systematically dismantling their defences day by day. We presented all the evidence we had collected, the dubious financial records, the incriminating letters, and the damning testimonies from former business associates who had witnessed William and Henry's unscrupulous dealings. Each piece of evidence added significant weight to our case, and each witness testimony eroded the narrative they had tried to construct. One of the most damning moments came when Mr. James, an old accountant who had worked closely with my grandfather and was intimately familiar with the family's financial dealings, took the stand. He testified with quiet dignity, his steady gaze recounting the financial discrepancies he had noticed, odd transfers and unauthorized withdrawals that had initially raised alarm bells. "I raised these concerns with Mr. William," he said, referring to my grandfather, "but he assured me that everything was in order. I can only assume now that he was being misled." The defence tried to rattle him, suggesting he had misinterpreted the data or had a personal vendetta against William and Henry, but he remained unshakable. His testimony was a powerful moment that left a palpable impact on the jury. The tension escalated when William himself took the stand, hoping to sway the jury with his charm and a rehearsed air of innocence. He spun a tale of loyalty and family, portraying himself as a dutiful son and a misunderstood brother who had only wanted to protect the family legacy. His performance was almost convincing until the prosecutor began his cross-examination. "Mr. William?" the prosecutor asked, his tone sharp, cutting through William's practiced demeanour. "Can you explain why funds supposedly intended for family investments were diverted into private accounts under your name?" William shifted uncomfortably, a flicker of panic crossing his eyes before he regained his composure. "It was a temporary measure," he claimed, his voice trying to maintain steadiness. "The family's finances..." My story is about the complexities of love, family, expectations, and finding one's own happiness. At 24 years old, I faced a challenging decision that put my values to the test. I've been in love with my partner, Matteo, 26, for 5 years. Despite being jobless, his lack of employment never diminished my feelings for him. However, I come from a family that highly values wealth and social status. My mother has always prioritised financial security and societal standing, while my father tends to support her views. My younger sister, Mia, 27, embraced our family's lifestyle, enjoying the comforts and advantages it brought without having to work a day in her life. In contrast to my immediate family, there's my cousin Michael, 25, who is very successful and wealthy. Growing up together, Michael was always seen by my mother as an ideal match for me, especially given his financial success and property developer. Despite my mother's hints and pressures about marrying Michael since we were teenagers, I knew that wasn't the path for me. My heart belonged to Matteo, and I was determined to marry for love, not money. As our wedding day approached, Matteo and I planned a modest but heartfelt celebration. We faced resistance from my mother, who wanted to turn the event into a lavish spectacle. The situation escalated when Matteo lost his job just a week before our wedding due to company layoffs. This loss was hard on him, and though it was a difficult time, we decided to postpone the wedding until we were more stable. My family's reaction was far from supportive. My mother took Matteo's job loss as a sign that he wasn't suitable for me. She even suggested that I should marry Michael instead, arguing that it would secure my future and fulfill family expectations. I was appalled by her proposal and firmly refused, reaffirming my commitment to Matteo, regardless of our financial situation. Ultimately, my choice led to me being estranged from my family. However, a year later, while Michael faced legal issues and incarceration, Matteo and I found happiness in our simple life together. We are now happily married and expecting our first child. This journey has taught me that true love and happiness come from following one's heart, not from meeting others' expectations or pursuing wealth. My mother presented me with a stark choice. Within a month, I either had to reconsider my decision or I would be forced to leave our home. Shockingly, she had already planned for my room to be taken over by my sister Mia, because I would supposedly no longer require as much space. It felt like a forceful nudge, not just out of our house, but out of the family itself, all because I refused to marry the man they chose for me. Mia wasted no time. The very next day she was in my room, measuring for her new furniture, completely assuming I would capitulate and marry Michael, leaving my life with Matteo behind. I attempted to discuss this once more with my mother, but she was immovable. She insisted that marrying into wealth was not an option, but a necessity, and without doing so, I wouldn't have her support. My father remained typically silent, merely echoing my mother's sentiments with his usual passivity. When I confronted Mia about her premature takeover of my room, she was dismissive, already considering me gone. Her indifference stung deeply, revealing the extent of her favoured status in our family. Faced with such betrayal and the stark reality of my situation, I decided it was time to leave. Moving in with Matteo felt daunting given our uncertain financial outlook, but we had each other, and that was a start. As I packed up my essentials, my mother watched silently, making no move to stop me, while Mia seemed delighted about claiming my room. Leaving my childhood home was painful, more so as it underscored how little my family valued my happiness compared to their concern for appearances and wealth. Matteo supported me through it all, even though he blamed himself for the family rift. I reassured him that it was not his fault. These were the choices my family made, not his. We moved in together, facing financial challenges, but remaining committed to each other. Adapting from wedding plans to just scraping by was tough. Despite the familial pressure, Matteo kept looking for better job opportunities, though it was disheartening to see him come home disheartened. We downsized our wedding plans, aiming to save enough for a simple ceremony. Although it wasn't the grand event I once imagined, the prospect of marrying in a courthouse surrounded by a few friends felt just right. Meanwhile, my mother and Mia seemed to thrive, or so they believed. My mother never missed a chance to point out my supposed mistake, but I knew I had made the right choice for my own happiness, no matter the hardships Matteo and I faced together. My conversations with my mother were dwindling, and on the rare occasions we spoke, she seemed intent on reminding me of Michael's latest business achievements, like buying new properties or expanding his empire. It felt like a persistent nudge for me to reconsider my decision to reject him. Meanwhile, Mia had fully settled into what used to be my room, redecorating it and even sending me photos of her newly designed space, her voice oozing satisfaction over how luxuriously she was now living. It was clear that both she and my mum thought they had won in some way. Unexpectedly, my dad began to reach out more often than before. He never explicitly said it, but I sensed his guilt over how I was treated by Mum and Mia. Occasionally, he discreetly handed me money to help with my living expenses, always insisting it was just a gift and that my mum shouldn't know. While I appreciated his support, it underscored his reluctance to confront them directly. Michael, on his part, was furious about my refusal. I didn't hear from him directly, but through my mum and other relatives, it became obvious that he took my rejection personally. He believed that marrying him was the best option for both of us, and was insulted that I chose Matteo instead, particularly at a time when Matteo was unemployed. My mum exacerbated the situation by continually telling Michael that I was making a colossal mistake, which only fueled his anger. Over time, Michael's resentment escalated into veiled threats aimed at both Matteo and me. He conveyed through our family that I would regret my decision, and hinted that he wouldn't be as forgiving as I expected. As weeks turned into months, unsettling rumours about Michael began to surface. Despite his outward success, whispers within the family suggested that his business dealings weren't exactly above board, involving manipulated contracts and forged documents to amass his wealth. Initially, I dismissed these rumours as just spiteful gossip, but as they became more frequent and consistent, the truth was hard to ignore. It eventually became widely known among our extended family that Michael's business was under investigation, and he was facing lawsuits from clients he had allegedly scammed. My mum, ever his champion, refused to accept these accusations, claiming people were simply envious and trying to tarnish Michael's successful image. However, when it became clear that Michael might face criminal charges, the scandal deeply impacted our family. My mum, who had tirelessly praised Michael and pushed for our marriage, suddenly became silent. As the gravity of Michael's situation sank in, she started calling me more frequently, but her tone had shifted dramatically. No longer was she boasting about what could have been if I had married Michael. Instead, there was a palpable sense of panic in her voice, a stark contrast to her previous confidence. In recent times, my conversations with her became sporadic. Whenever we spoke, she frequently brought up Michael, discussing his latest real estate acquisition or business expansion. It seemed she was hinting that there was still a chance for me to reconsider my decision. Meanwhile, Mia settled into what used to be my room, transforming it with her own style and eagerly showing me pictures, as if to highlight what I was missing out on. Her tone carried an air of smug satisfaction as she described the comfort and luxury she now enjoyed at home, making it evident that she and my mother felt victorious in some way. Surprisingly, my father became more involved than I anticipated. Though he never explicitly expressed it, I sensed his guilt over how my mother and Mia had treated me. Occasionally, he discreetly gave me money to help with my living expenses, insisting it was a gift and that I should keep it a secret from my mother. While I was grateful for his support, it underscored his reluctance to confront my mother or Mia directly. As for Michael, he was irate that I had declined his marriage proposal. Although I didn't hear it from him directly, it was clear from conversations with my mother and other relatives that he took my refusal personally. He believed marrying him was the optimal decision for both of us, and felt insulted by my choice to be with Matteo, especially since Matteo was currently jobless. My mother didn't make things easier. She continually provoked Michael by insisting that I was making a monumental error and expressing her disappointment in me. Eventually, Michael's facade began to crack, and he started issuing indirect threats towards Matteo and me. He sent warnings through family members, indicating that I would regret my decision and that his forgiveness had its limits. As time went on, unsettling rumours about Michael began to circulate. His business, it turned out, was not as reputable as he portrayed. Whispers within the family hinted at fraudulent dealings, including manipulated contracts and forged documents to amass his wealth. Initially, I was sceptical, but the consistent and growing buzz made me realise there might be some truth to these claims. It became widely acknowledged among our relatives that Michael's business activities were under scrutiny, and that he faced lawsuits from clients he had duped. My mother was in denial, refusing to accept that her favoured nephew could be involved in such deceit. When I confronted her, she dismissed the accusations, claiming that jealousy over Michael's success was the real motive behind these allegations. Yet, I could detect the uncertainty in her voice. The scandal severely impacted my family, especially my mother, who had devoted considerable effort to promoting Michael as an ideal match for me. However, as the possibility of criminal charges against Michael loomed, her usual boastful tone changed. She began reaching out more frequently, but now her calls lacked the previous arrogance about how much better off I would have been with Michael. My mother was almost pleading with me to maintain my ties to the family, as if she needed to retain some control. My dad, on the other hand, kept his distance, yet remained supportive. I believe he had always harboured suspicions about Michael's so-called success, but kept them to himself. Once the truth about Michael emerged, my dad was quietly supportive, offering financial assistance when possible, though it was evident he struggled with balancing his support for me and maintaining peace with my mum. Mia, who had once put Michael on a pedestal, found her world upended. Her admiration for his apparent wealth and success had blinded her to his deceit. As the scandal unfolded, she desperately tried to salvage her own image. Dreams of being an influencer faded as people distanced themselves from anyone linked to the scandal. The situation escalated when Michael was arrested for fraud, sending shockwaves through the family. My mum was crushed. The image she had built up around Michael shattered, leaving her frantically trying to preserve her dignity. She reached out to me, hoping I would re-engage with the family and attend gatherings to help mend the family's image. Despite everything, she seemed to believe I could return, as if nothing had happened. I couldn't. My refusal marked a definitive break, yet it also felt liberating. Amidst this familial strife, Matteo and I found our footing. Despite the challenges, we were committed to each other, building a life based on authenticity, not illusions like my family had. With this newfound clarity, we decided to proceed with our wedding, no longer waiting for the perfect moment. We opted for a small, intimate garden wedding, far removed from our original grand plans, but infinitely more meaningful. The ceremony was held in the quaint backyard of Matteo's parents' home, who kindly offered it for the occasion. The guest list was concise, including close friends, a few of Matteo's supportive family members, and notably, my dad. My mum and Mia, still grappling with the fallout, were absent. Their absence was a relief. I didn't need their approval anymore. As I walked down the aisle, any doubt instilled by my family dissipated. Matteo's gaze reaffirmed my decision. Nothing else mattered. My dad, not usually one to express his emotions, walked me down the aisle and even gave a short, heartfelt speech at the reception. He said, "I've always believed that love should guide us, not money or status. I'm proud of Lucy for choosing love." His words moved me deeply. It was all the affirmation I needed. Unexpectedly, Michael's parents attended the wedding. They had kept a low profile throughout the ordeal, but came forward with apologies and regret over their son's actions. They expressed embarrassment and a clear desire to distance themselves from the chaos my mother had exacerbated. They approached with sincerity, extending an olive branch, a gesture that surprised and touched us. They also brought a thoughtful gift, signalling a hopeful beginning to mending fences, even in the smallest of ways. The gift from Michael's parents came as a complete surprise, a very generous check to support our future, a gesture meant to compensate for the turmoil Michael had caused. Matteo and I were taken aback by their kindness, but we gratefully accepted it. This was one of the rare moments in the midst of all the chaos where it felt like things were beginning to calm down. After the wedding, Matteo and I settled into a simple apartment. It wasn't lavish, but it was our own space. We both agreed that starting fresh, far from my family's expectations and the surrounding drama, was what we needed. Our main focus was on building a life together, one not defined by wealth or social status. Matteo secured a new job a few weeks post-wedding. Though it paid less than his previous position, it offered him a fresh start. He was visibly happier and less stressed, which made it feel like we were truly beginning to find our footing. We started saving and planning for our future, discussing dreams and aspirations that were important to us both. We concentrated on our careers and our relationship, embracing the struggles because they were ours to tackle together. The wealth my family had envisioned was absent, but in its place was something far more valuable. A relationship grounded in love, trust, and mutual respect, which, to me, was priceless. Reflecting on the past year since our wedding, it seemed like a different lifetime, one filled with family-induced chaos that now felt distant. Matteo and I had faced numerous challenges, but we emerged stronger. For our first anniversary, Matteo organised a romantic dinner at a quaint local restaurant. It was simple yet perfect, just the two of us, reflecting on our journey and celebrating how far we'd come. Holding his hand that evening, I felt immense gratitude for all we had overcome together. We toasted to love, resilience, and the bright future awaiting us. The best part of the evening came after we returned home. Matteo had some fantastic news. He had been promoted at work. It wasn't just any promotion. It came with a significant pay raise and greater job security. He had worked tirelessly over the past year to rebuild his career, and I couldn't have been prouder. His promotion symbolised all that we had endured together, marking the beginning of better days ahead. Despite our progress, my family hadn't completely withdrawn from our lives. Over the past few months, my mother increased her attempts to reconnect, calling and messaging, even sending a congratulatory card for our anniversary. She expressed a desire to move forward. Mia also reached out occasionally, offering lukewarm apologies for her behaviour during the whole ordeal with Michael. She confessed to being envious, jealous of the attention Matteo gave me, my independence, and my courage to stand up to the family. While part of me wanted to believe in their sincerity, I remained cautious. Forgiving them wasn't easy after everything they had put me through. Their overtures, though potentially genuine, would take time to fully consider, reflecting on whether they truly understood the depth of the issues they had caused. For now, Matteo and I were focused on nurturing our own lives, fortified by the trials we had faced and optimistic about the path ahead. Though it wasn't straightforward, I didn't want to completely sever ties with them. I could no longer trust them as before, so I chose a guarded approach. I limited our interactions to text messages and the occasional phone call, nothing beyond that. I needed time to mend from the hurt they had inflicted, and was determined not to allow them an easy re-entry into my life as if nothing had transpired. Just when I thought that there were no more surprises left, I discovered I was pregnant. Starting a family had been a topic of discussion between Matteo and me, though we hadn't been actively trying. The positive result on the pregnancy test left me utterly astonished. Matteo was the first person I shared the news with. I'll always remember his expression of sheer joy mixed with disbelief when I showed him the test. He embraced me so tightly I almost couldn't breathe, and for a moment, everything felt absolutely perfect. We shared tears and laughter, then eagerly began planning our future as parents. Amidst tentative reconciliations from my mum and Mia, it was my dad who surprised me with his quiet support. He had observed the family's troubles from a distance, understanding more than I had realised. One day, he invited me to lunch. Initially hesitant, I accepted. He was direct, skipping small talk to offer a substantial gesture. He wanted to help us with a down payment for our first home. This offer from my dad, who seldom made grand gestures, touched me deeply. He confessed he had been saving for a while, and though my mum was unaware, he felt it was important to use this savings to support us. He explained it was his way of apologising for not standing up for me sooner. Seeing the effort it took for him to express this made me appreciate how deeply he cared. This act of generosity was his way of showing love and support in the manner he knew best. I accepted with profound gratitude, recognising this significant gesture as his expression of enduring love. When I was 19, my cousin, whom I'll refer to as Ellie, falsely accused me of sexual assault. This accusation led my family to ostracise me, cutting off my college fund and removing me from the family home. Ellie, who is 4 years older than me, was once close to me during our childhood. Over the years, we drifted apart. She is the only child of my uncle, a respected single father, and my mum's younger brother. My uncle, having married young due to an unexpected pregnancy, was later betrayed by his wife, who left him after a brief marriage. Despite these setbacks, he devoted himself entirely to raising Ellie. He had managed to set aside a college fund for her, but made it clear that after her undergraduate degree, she would need to finance any further education herself, as he needed to save for his retirement. Ellie often disagreed with her father's decision, leading to frequent arguments between them. During these times, she would seek refuge with my family, venting to my mum about her frustrations. One particular day when my parents were out and I was the only one at home, Ellie arrived unexpectedly. I informed her that my mum wasn't home, expecting her to leave, but she chose to stay and vent to me instead. As she complained about her father, I expressed a different viewpoint. I told her that while my mum might have supported her views, I believed her father's expectations were reasonable. He had raised her to be independent, and it was now time for her to stand on her own. Frustrated, I suggested that if she found balancing work and further studies too challenging, perhaps she should reconsider her educational ambitions. This conversation did not sit well with Ellie. Shortly after, she accused me of assault, a claim that my family accepted without question, leading to the drastic changes in my life. Recently, as Ellie faces a terminal illness, she admitted to fabricating the accusation. Despite her confession, my family has asked me to remain silent about the truth. The dynamics within my family, influenced by past betrayals and my uncle's stoic independence, have shaped a complex web of relationships and decisions. This situation underscores the profound impact of false accusations and the deep scars they leave not just on the accused, but within the fabric of an entire family. I had always done so much for her, but instead of showing appreciation, she acted as if I were the villain in her story. It seemed she wasn't ready for the dose of reality I gave her. After I confronted her, she erupted in anger, labeling me a terrible person, accusing me of being a privileged brat who couldn't possibly grasp her struggles. Despite her harsh words, I found it ironic since she appeared more privileged than I ever was. She hurled insults at me for a few minutes before storming out of the house in tears. I chose not to chase after her. I was tired of the repetitive nature of her complaints. Unexpectedly, the situation escalated the next day when she accused me of sexual assault. This accusation turned my life upside down, isolating me from everyone, including my family. It took 2 years for people to discover her allegations were false, and only then did my family begin to reconnect with me. The day after our argument, a chaotic morning followed. My parents, visibly shaken, woke me early to inform me that my uncle and she were downstairs, claiming an urgent matter. I was oblivious to the severity until I faced them. She theatrically recounted a fabricated story of assault from the night before, while my uncle, deeply troubled, relayed to my parents how she had returned home distraught and eventually confessed her made-up ordeal to him. As she performed her breakdown, no one seemed to hear my protests of innocence. It was devastating to be treated as a criminal by my own family. In a desperate bid for acknowledgement, I ended up throwing a vase against the wall, which only worsened matters. My father, furious, dragged me to my room and locked me in. I pounded on the door until my arms hurt, determined not to let her deceit go unchallenged. It was a monumental lie, one that threatened to destroy my reputation and change my life forever. Unfortunately, my father didn't let me out of the room until my uncle and Ellie had left. When he finally opened the door, I burst into tears and tried to explain that I was innocent. But my parents had already made up their minds. They revealed that they had reviewed the security footage, which showed Ellie arriving and then quickly leaving our house in distress. Based on her emotional exit, they chose to believe her story over mine. My parents expressed deep disappointment, ashamed of the son they believed they had raised. My mother was too emotional to speak, while my father explained the difficult bargain they had struck to avoid legal consequences. My uncle and Ellie had agreed not to pursue any legal action in exchange for certain concessions from my parents. As part of the agreement, my father decided I would be sent away to live with my great-uncle in Lower, a man known for his poor temper and whom I particularly disliked. This place was chosen because it was the farthest I could be from our family home. Moreover, they decided to transfer my college fund to Ellie to ensure her silence about the incident. I tried to protest, but my parents were unyielding. Feeling utterly defeated, I began to suspect that Ellie's false accusations were motivated by a desire to manipulate my parents for financial gain, especially since her own father would never accept such help. Within days, I was packed and ready to leave. My parents barely acknowledged my presence during those last days at home. There were no goodbyes, no hugs. They had confiscated my phone and insisted I cut all ties with my past life, threatening that any failure to disappear completely would force them to expose the situation publicly, potentially ruining my life further. So, I left everything and everyone I knew behind because of Ellie's lie. When my great-uncle came to pick me up, I was sent into what felt like exile. Adjusting to life with him was incredibly difficult. He taunted me daily, despite not knowing the full reason for my banishment, using my situation as an excuse to mock me constantly. Living with him was like walking on eggshells, always trying to avoid triggering his anger. Though I knew my parents were financially supporting him, he acted as if he were doing me a huge favour by allowing me to stay. Resigned to my new reality, I stopped lamenting my circumstances and focused on moving forward. My parents had severed ties with me completely, leaving me to rebuild my life from scratch in a place where I was unwanted and underappreciated. Cut off from everyone I once knew, I was left with no choice but to carve out a new path for myself. I couldn't attend the college I had been accepted to since my family had redirected my college fund elsewhere, and I lacked the financial means to pursue higher education on my own. Thus, I turned my attention to finding a job. After a few weeks of feeling dejected and attending several interviews, I secured a position as a labourer. The job was physically demanding and didn't pay well, which added to my misery, but it was a start. Receiving my first paycheck was a turning point. It meant I could finally leave my great-uncle's place, which was a relief both for me and, I suspected, for him. Around the same time, I bonded with two co-workers who were in similar financial straits. We pooled our resources and rented an apartment together, a move that marked the beginning of a better phase in my life. Over the next 2 years, my roommates and I changed jobs frequently, always in search of better opportunities and more bearable working conditions. The constant job switching was tough, but it allowed us to save money with a shared goal, to eventually afford college. Currently, I work in cafe, which pays decently, and I'm considering reapplying to colleges. My roommates are also doing well. We've even moved into a larger apartment in a nicer neighbourhood. Just as life seemed to stabilise and improve, my estranged family attempted to re-enter my life. It had been 2 years of silence when suddenly my father emailed me. I hadn't blocked my family's contacts, partly because I adhered strictly to their conditions when they expelled me, fearing they might further tarnish my reputation if I breached their directives. The email from my dad was unexpected. It contained an apology for everything that had transpired over the past years, and a request for my current contact information so he could reach out more formally. He also provided his contact details in case I wanted to initiate communication on my terms. The reason behind his outreach and apology was even more startling. Ellie was on her deathbed and had confessed the truth about the false accusations she had made against me years ago. Her confession to her father had prompted him to inform my parents of the real circumstances. Ellie had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it seemed her grave condition had prompted a moment of conscience, leading her to rectify the lies that had caused so much disruption in my life. While the news of her illness was tragic, it brought a grim sense of closure to the ordeal that had upended my existence. Now, with the truth out, I faced the complex decision of whether to reconnect with my family and how to process the overdue admission of my innocence. Ellie has been grappling with her health for the past 8 months, enduring a steady decline despite ongoing treatment. Sadly, her situation hasn't improved, and she wasn't even able to benefit from the money she took from my college fund. Instead of investing in her education, she chose to take a gap year to travel the world, seeking to expand her horizons and find herself. However, her extravagant lifestyle quickly depleted her savings. By the time she returned a year and a half later, she had burned through more than half of her funds, living luxuriously and far beyond her means. Facing dwindling resources, she approached my parents for more financial support, but my uncle intervened, threatening to cut her off if she continued to drain their finances. Consequently, she abandoned her plans for a master's degree as she couldn't afford the tuition without a job, a commitment she was unwilling to make. With the remnants of her savings, Ellie could have made prudent investments or saved for the future. Yet, her year-long holiday seemed to have fostered a sense of laziness, and her spoiled nature led her to further squander her funds. She bought an apartment and continued her lavish lifestyle without securing a job. Eventually, she did find employment, but soon after, she was diagnosed with cancer, which forced her to quit. Her financial recklessness caught up with her, compelling her to sell her apartment and possessions to cover her medical expenses. Reading about her downfall in the email from my dad, I couldn't help but feel a sense of ironic justice. Ellie, once my accuser, had become her own worst enemy. After absorbing the news, I faced a dilemma about whether to reconnect with my parents. I discussed it with my friends, the only close confidants I had, which meant revealing the full extent of my past troubles for the first time. Initially, I had only shared with them that I was kicked out due to some disagreements. Now, I explained everything about Ellie's deceit, how my parents had sided with her, and how they had not only exiled me but also threatened to tarnish my reputation if I defied them. My friends were shocked by my story and strongly advised against reconciling with my parents. They suggested that, given everything I had endured, I should speak out about my ordeal. Their perspective was compelling. For 1 year, I had lived in fear and isolation because of a lie. My friends believed that if I wanted to reclaim my life and integrity, I needed to make the truth known. Encouraged by their support, I decided to confront my parents. I planned to share my version of events publicly, believing that people deserved to know the truth. This was not just about clearing my name. It was about shedding light on the injustice I had suffered and preventing such harm from befalling others. Despite Ellie's grave condition, I couldn't just overlook the profound impact her actions had on my life. After years of silence and compliance, I was ready to reclaim my narrative, so I used the contact number my dad had provided to inform him of my intentions. I wasn't seeking his permission, rather I was just notifying him out of courtesy. I had the screenshots of the email he sent confirming Ellie's deception, which I could use to share my story publicly, and I was ready to finally re-engage with social media after being barred from it. However, my message seemed to have been misunderstood. Soon, my phone was inundated with calls and texts from my dad, mum, and even my uncle, all pleading with me not to go public. They argued that Ellie had already suffered enough, and that exposing her further would only ruin her reputation irreparably. They suggested I could reintegrate into my old life as if nothing had happened, without anyone questioning my sudden disappearance and return. But that approach didn't sit right with me. Ellie's actions had stripped a significant part of my life away, and my friends agreed it was reasonable for me to want to share my truth. It wasn't about revenge. It was about transparency and closure. I wasn't even planning on returning to my old city. I was content where I was. However, I missed my friends and the relatives who had treated me well. I felt they deserved to know the real reason behind my prolonged absence. The persistent calls and messages from my family were the only things holding me back. They stressed that Ellie was in very poor health and practically begged me not to post anything. Yet, I wondered, what if I went ahead and shared my story anyway, explaining why I had to leave everything behind for 2 years and expose the truth about my cousin, even though she was on her deathbed? I did it, after much deliberation and countless discussions with my friends, who consistently supported my decision. I chose to proceed. They reminded me that Ellie and my family had taken 2 years of my life, during which I had lived in constant fear, despite my innocence. After 1 year of being essentially off the grid, disconnecting from everyone who knew me, including friends and relatives, I've recently reconnected, and the warmth I've received has been overwhelming. Initially, many had reached out, but it seems my parents had told everyone that I needed solitude to recover from a traumatic experience, prompting them to stop contacting me out of respect for my space. Hearing from my friends and relatives about their repeated inquiries into my whereabouts, which my parents had obfuscated, really moved me. It made me realise how much they cared and had patiently waited for me to resurface. Learning that people hadn't forgotten me and were eager to welcome me back touched me deeply. Many expressed that they had always been suspicious of Ellie's character, and learning of her deceit reaffirmed their doubts. My parents and uncle have been silent so far, and I prefer it that way. I'm not ready to face them. Sharing my story publicly lifted a great burden from my shoulders, affirming that speaking out was the right decision. I don't regret it. A couple of days after my post, my parents reached out, expressing disappointment. They had hoped I would let sleeping dogs lie and fabricate some excuse for my absence, instead of revealing the truth to preserve Ellie's peace in her condition. Following my post, Ellie has seemingly lost most of her friends, and no family member wishes to associate with her, which my parents blame on me. It's astonishing that even now, their concern seems to pivot more around Ellie than the years of hardship I endured. Their apology felt insufficient, and I told them bluntly that their disappointment was no longer my concern. They had let me down profoundly, and now they had no right to expect anything from me. If they believe Ellie deserves peace because of her illness, I argued that I deserved the same consideration when they sent me away at 19 to live with a difficult relative, yet received none. I informed them that I did not want any further contact, and then took the definitive step of blocking them, something I should have done long ago. Speaking my truth has not only provided closure, but freed me from the weight of dealing with them. Recently, I decided to visit my friends and family for the first time in 3 years, bringing my roommates along for moral support. It turned out to be an incredible reunion. My friends were thrilled to see me, and I even ended up staying at one of their homes instead of a hotel, as they were offended at the thought of me staying anywhere else. We've been having the time of our lives, catching up and bonding as if no time had passed. Additionally, I've reconnected with several relatives who've informed me they've severed ties with my parents, my uncle and Ellie, choosing to stand with me. It's heartening to see that they, like my friends, prioritize integrity and loyalty. At the tender age of 15, I found myself in a harsh predicament that seemed more like a tale of old rather than a reality. Cast out by my parents for being too frail to toil on the farms that dot the rural landscape of Arkansas, I felt my world crumble. In this part of the country, where the soil and the sun shape the daily lives of its inhabitants, children are often expected to follow in the footsteps of their elders, tilling the land from a young age. Education is a luxury few entertain, and unfortunately, my parents were not among the enlightened few who valued it. Despite my keen interest in learning and a desire to rise beyond the confines of farm life, my dreams were dashed shortly after I celebrated my 15th birthday. My father, without farm of his own, dealt in the produce delivery, but decided that it was time for me to abandon school and join the ranks of painter on a vast, sprawling farm owned by a friend of his. However, my body could not meet the grueling demands of farm work. On my very first day, I collapsed from exhaustion, stirring a whirlwind of concern, and ultimately leading the ranch manager to refuse further risk by employing me. This decision did not sit well with my parents, who had hoped I would quickly return to work. Their attempts to find another employer for me failed, as word of my fainting spread swiftly through the community, and no one else dared take the risk. Back home, tension escalated. My presence seemed to only irritate my parents further. They criticised me incessantly, and even reduced my food rations, as if I consumed more than my share of resources by merely existing. In desperation, I proposed the idea of returning to school, hoping education would be my escape and a path to a better future. This suggestion was met with disdain and a violent rebuff from my mother, further sealing my fate as unwelcome in my own home. Eventually, I found sanctuary with my uncle, a more compassionate relative who later passed away, leaving me his house. It was then, living in a place of my own and out of the shadows of relentless hardship, that my parents began to seek a re-entry into my life. Now, as I ponder their motives, I'm left to reconcile my tumultuous past with the possibilities of a future that I once thought unreachable, yet one that I have begun to forge on my terms, grounded in the resilience of a spirit they could not break. My story begins with a stark warning from my father. If I didn't find a job within a week, he would kick me out of the house. Unfortunately, the week passed without any job prospects, and true to his word, my father forced me out. At first, my parents pretended to ignore my plight, but behind the scenes, they were already orchestrating my departure. I was taken aback when I saw JPO, Child Protection Officer, at our doorstep. My parents had reached out to them, claiming they were unable to provide for me anymore, and suggesting I be placed in a foster home or orphanage. The JPO officials came to verify whether my parents were genuinely incapable or simply shirking their responsibilities. As I overheard them, my parents explained their dire financial straits, admitting they could barely support my younger brother and me. They felt they had to choose between us, and they chose my brother. The JPO team decided that before moving forward with the option of foster care or an orphanage, they would first see if any of my parents' relatives could take me in. My father mentioned his cousin, Uncle Michael, who lived in the city, but he was unsure if Michael could or would take me. He hadn't been in touch with Michael for over 7 years, relying on outdated information to assess Michael's situation. Uncle Michael, and unlike my father, valued education and had even considered pursuing a master's degree but lacked the funds. After failing to find a job post-college, Uncle Michael struggled, which only fueled my father's resentment as he viewed academia as a waste of time. This tension reached a boiling point when my father demanded Michael leave our home because he couldn't support him anymore. Michael left for the city and never looked back. Now, the JPO planned to contact Uncle Michael, and I was anxious about his response. Given their strained relationship, would he be willing to take me in, the son of the cousin who had turned him away? After years of silence, the answer came. To everyone's surprise, Uncle Michael agreed to take me in. My parents were shocked, having expected him to return their harshness with coldness. As I prepared to leave my home and start a new chapter with Uncle Michael, my parents coldly remarked that I would likely fail like him. These harsh words left a deep impression on me. Now, at 21, reflecting back on these events, I realise how life's challenges and the actions of others shape our paths in unforeseen ways. Uncle Michael's willingness to rise above the past and help me has taught me about forgiveness and resilience. As I continue on my journey, I carry these lessons with me, hoping to prove that kindness can indeed triumph over bitterness. I vividly remember the day JPO Child Protection Officer came to take me away to live with Uncle Michael. It was an emotionally charged day, especially for my little brother William. As I was led away, he chased after me, clinging to me tightly and crying, pleading for me not to go. The pain of leaving him behind was unbearable, and I couldn't help but cry along with him. Our parents quickly intervened to separate us, maintaining a composed facade to avoid giving JPO any negative impressions about their parenting. They reassured William and me that this separation was for the best, but I knew the reality would be harsh for William, likely facing our father's strict discipline once I was gone. The journey to Uncle Michael's house was filled with anxiety. Upon arrival, Uncle Michael greeted me with joy, which I initially suspected was a show for JPO. However, after a brief talk with the officials, they left, and I braced myself for what I thought would be a difficult transition. To my surprise, Uncle Michael was genuinely concerned, noting how thin I had become. He showed me to my room and immediately cooked a delicious meal, the likes of which I had never had at home. If this was what being a failure looked like, as my parents had often labelled Uncle Michael, then I was more than okay with it. After finishing my meal quickly, Uncle Michael served me more without even needing to ask if I was still hungry. That afternoon, I took a long nap, which was followed by a heartfelt conversation with Uncle Michael about everything that had happened. Uncle Michael was disappointed with my parents' actions, suggesting that if it weren't for the legal implications of abandonment, they might not have even involved JPO. He wasted no time enrolling me back in school. Without any children of his own and not currently pursuing marriage, Uncle Michael was focused on his career and mentioned considering a surrogate in the future. 2 years passed without any contact from my parents. Their lack of concern only solidified their neglect, which prompted Uncle Michael to confront them. On the day we went to visit, his car was out of service, so we took a taxi. Arriving at my parents' home, it was William who opened the door. I was struck by how much healthier I looked compared to him. Living with Uncle Michael had clearly been beneficial for me. William, cautious and subdued due to our parents' influence, only managed a small smile. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. My mother's sarcastic greeting suggested that Uncle Michael might be tired of me, implying I was a burden. This stung deeply, but Uncle Michael immediately defended me, telling my parents that my improved well-being was a testament to their failure in parenting. My father retorted that I was merely depleting Uncle Michael's resources. After a brief and heated exchange, Uncle Michael and I left, my heart heavy with the unresolved tension and William's silence, a clear sign of the pressure from our parents. Now, at 21 and in college, I reflect on those turbulent times with a sense of clarity about the impact of Uncle Michael's kindness and the stark contrast with my parents' indifference. Living with Uncle Michael not only provided me with stability, but also taught me the value of kindness and the importance of standing up for oneself. I'm deeply concerned about my younger brother William's well-being. Despite it being 5 weeks since Uncle Michael and I last visited my parents, I couldn't shake off a troubling feeling. Uncle Michael noticed my moodiness immediately and, upon questioning, I confessed to him that the visit had left me uneasy. William, who is full of dreams and aspirations, is stuck in an environment where his potential is stifled. My parents, who have little regard for education, seemed indifferent to William's ambitions, making our sibling bond feel strained and distant. Uncle Michael acknowledged the grimness of William's situation, but reminded me that there wasn't much to be done while William was under our parents' guardianship. I, however, couldn't accept that. If my parents had been willing to let me go, perhaps they'd be open to letting William move to the city with us. Uncle Michael was sceptical. He pointed out that while he was open to helping William, he believed our parents wouldn't easily relinquish their hold. Armed with determination, I visited my parents again. This time, only my father and William were home. I broached the subject of William moving to the city with me, hoping he could escape to a better environment and pursue his education. My father remained silent for a long time after my proposition, then questioned whether I doubted his intentions for William. Choosing to avoid confrontation, I explained that I was considering what William wanted for himself. This seemed to upset my father further. He insisted that his plans for William were superior to any dreams William might have had for himself. William, standing beside us, began to sob quietly. Frustrated and bold, I challenged my father's approach, warning that it could lead William to resent them in the future. Dismissively, my father claimed the opposite would be true, that William would thank him later. The conversation ended with my father demanding that I leave and never return. As I walked away, I realised Uncle Michael had been right. Nevertheless, I was not ready to give up on William. He was only 16, and in 4 years, he would be old enough to make his own decisions. My hope clung to the possibility that he would still yearn to pursue his education, not succumbing to the narrow path our parents favoured. Fast forward 2 years from that update, and here I am at 24, financially secure, though not through my own efforts, but due to unforeseen circumstances. Our life with Uncle Michael continued quietly until I noticed a decline in his health. Despite my concerns, Uncle Michael assured me there was nothing to worry about. He often spoke of finding strength in life's challenges, conversations that seemed out of character at the time, but later revealed their depth. As I sit here typing with a net worth of just over $100,000, thanks to Uncle Michael's guidance and perhaps unforeseen inheritance, I feel a mix of gratitude and heaviness. While I've achieved financial stability, my thoughts remain with William, still under our parents' roof. The challenge now isn't just about financial success, it's about ensuring that my brother can also find his way out and not be lost to our parents' damaging philosophies. As Uncle Michael taught me, it's about finding strength, even when you feel most alone. I remember the conversation vividly. Uncle Michael, noticing something was on my mind, asked what I would do if I inherited all his wealth. Eagerly, I shared my dream of starting a scholarship fund for kids in my countryside who, like me, wanted to pursue education but lacked the financial means. As I spoke, Uncle Michael suddenly began to cough. The cough persisted, so I quickly fetched him a glass of water. When I returned, I was alarmed to see his hand covered in blood as he reached for the glass. This was far more serious than I had thought. Once he seemed a bit more stable, I urged him to go to the hospital, but he remained unnervingly calm. It was then that he revealed he had been battling stage 4 lung cancer and that treatments had been unsuccessful. The doctors had given him only a few months to live. I was devastated. Desperate to help, I suggested seeking treatment at renowned medical centres around the world, but he gently explained that he had already explored many options, all confirming the same grim prognosis. Living with the knowledge of Uncle Michael's condition was torturous. Every day was a painful reminder of the limited time we had left together. Eventually, he was admitted to the hospital to put his affairs in order. During this time, he made it clear that he intended for me to inherit everything he owned, which turned out to be over $100,000. Despite the significant inheritance, I was too heartbroken to care about the money. Against Uncle Michael's wishes, I felt compelled to contact my parents. Despite our strained relationship, I hoped they might reconcile with him in his final days. Unfortunately, reaching out only confirmed their indifference and bitterness. My mother coldly passed the phone to my father, who, upon hearing why I called, angrily accused me of seeking money for medical expenses. His heartless response crushed me. I regretted not heeding Uncle Michael's advice. Uncle Michael passed away later that week. We had discussed the importance of staying strong, but his death hit me harder than I had anticipated. No amount of preparation seemed enough to face the loss of someone who had become my world. As I reflect on these events, disobeying Uncle Michael's last wish haunts me. I had hoped for a moment of compassion from my parents, but their reaction only deepened the wound. Now, as I carry on, I strive to honour Uncle Michael's legacy in ways that matter, focusing on the strength and resilience he instilled in me. After Uncle Michael passed away, I made the decision not to inform my parents of his death, given their earlier indifference. Revealing that he had died felt unnecessary. I had never organised anything as significant as a funeral before, so I wasn't sure where to begin. Thankfully, once Uncle Michael's close friends learned of his passing, they stepped in and coordinated a dignified burial that honoured his memory. The funeral was held at a funeral home, respecting Uncle Michael's wish for a non-religious service followed by cremation. As I stood by his coffin, the reality of his departure hit hard. Seeing him so peaceful, as though just asleep, was surreal and heart-wrenching. I found a quiet corner to gather my thoughts and let my emotions flow, but my solitude was interrupted by a voice I knew all too well. It sounded like my father. Turning around, I was shocked to see my parents mingling with Uncle Michael's friends, attempting to appear close to him. The grief I felt quickly turned into anger. As I approached them, my mother questioned why I hadn't informed them of Uncle Michael's death. I bluntly told her that Uncle Michael wouldn't have wanted them there. She protested, but I was distracted by the ceremony's continuation. It was time for the cremation. Despite my upset, I temporarily set aside my feelings about my parents' presence to focus on honouring Uncle Michael. After the cremation, I invited the attendees back to Uncle Michael's house for refreshments, a place he had proudly built and now belonged to me. My parents, among the guests, were visibly surprised by the beauty and grandeur of the house. Confronted by their curiosity, I confirmed that the house was indeed Uncle Michael's creation, but now mine. When my mother skeptically asked if I was serious, I affirmed, revealing that Uncle Michael had also left me a substantial inheritance. This news visibly shook them. Their surprise turned to an awkward attempt to reassert their parental authority, but I was resolute. I asked the security to escort them out, emphasising that this was in line with what Uncle Michael would have wanted. After the brief chaos, I apologised to the other guests, reassuring them that everything was now under control. This experience has only strengthened my resolve to live a life that honours Uncle Michael's memory and the values he instilled in me. Looking ahead, I plan to change my name and, hopefully, by next year convince my brother William to come and live with me, away from the toxic environment our parents create. I'm grateful for the support I've received from friends and the community throughout these challenging times. Your support has been invaluable,